Hello everyone, today we look at 4 chess imbalances to improve your chess elo rating. So let's have a look at the first imbalance of our video, which is superior minor piece. So here's a first example. Clearly, white's knight is no comparison to black's bishop. The black bishop is enjoying a long diagonal, which is the f1 to a6 diagonal, and a short one as well, from f1 to h3. And the white knight is a piece which is buried alive, suffering in the shortage of air. Let's see how this game can continue further. King b4, changing the focus to the queen side, as the king side is dead. Bishop g2, the white knight will now be taken from the bishop. Then d5, bishop take knight, king to b5, bishop g2, king a6, bishop f1 check, king take pawn, bishop to c4, d6, king c6, king a8, bishop e6, and clearly black has won this game, but let's see how this game can continue further. King b8, king take pawn, king c7, king to e4, d4 heading towards the king side, pawn push, bishop take pawn, king take bishop. The sacrifice was because black has an advanced pawn as compared to white's pawn, which is way down the board, and black's king is also very close to the pawns. So we have king to d3, king to e6, and the pawn is taken, so is black's, and in the next two moves black has a queen. So this was our first example. Let's head to our second example. Alright, so this is white to play, and this is a second example. I'll give you 2 seconds to find the correct continuation here. Okay, if you found it, well done, else we're just here to learn. The correct move is f6, and the bishop is trapped forever, like at least permanently until the end game. Now, we can have something like queen to b6 check as a waiting move, but that wouldn't help much. So we just simply have bishop to h8, and this permanently traps the bishop because there's no way to escape. Then we have e5, demanding even more space, queen to b6 check, d4, and look at the strong pawn structure what our white has. We'll look over it soon. Queen to e6, changing the focus towards the king side now, and simply queen to f4. The king side squares are controlled. We only have queen to h3, but again it doesn't help much. Alright, let's move on to the next example. Alright, so our last example is an internet game which was played by me. So here we have bishop take queen, knight take queen, bishop take rook, and I defend the bishop and take the knight, defend rook, knight to here attacking the rook, bishop take pawn, he didn't defend the rook, bishop to here attacking on the rook, he defends his rook, and I take his rook. This was the position, and here there's an absolutely excellent move. Can you find it? Alright, so the move was pawn to f6, and the bishop is trapped because the pawn on f4 blocks the bishop from moving any further, and the only possible square was g4, which is now blocked by the pawn on f6. Alright, so here we have pawn break, trying to exchange the pawns, then pawn break. So the bishop is totally trapped. Oh, pawn to h4, then bishop to here defending the pawn, pawn take pawn, bishop take pawn, pawn break. So the idea of opponent was excellent. After king to here, bishop to here, the bishop is defended, and of course king to h7 is wrong. as bishop to uh, g7 blocks the king from coming any further, and it would anyways we would have to come to f7. So the whole reason of this game is that white's bishop is trapped, and after further exchanges, let's look how the game goes further. Rook to here, bishop to here check. This is much better than rook take rook, because after bishop to here check, king take rook, bishop take rook, and we are attacking on the pawn. So you must defend the pawn, and we can take this advantage to get a bishop to an advanced square or developed square. Here king to e3, because we don't want to allow the king to come towards our king side, or where the bishop and pawn is. Pawn break check, king back, king to here, pawn push, we give the pawn for getting a king to an advanced square. And now it's a whole bishop versus king endgame, which is obviously an advantage for the player who has the bishop. And so the game goes for a win to black. Alright, so second example is pawn structure. This is a pretty important imbalance, and we'll have a look at different pawn structures. Compare white's pawn structure to black's pawn structure. Weak pawn structures include doubled up pawns and isolated pawns. So double up pawns are pawns in which there are two pawns on the same file. So for example, the two pawns on the e5 are an example, one on e7, one on e6. These pawns are not only double but isolated. Isolated means that they have no other pawn nearby them so that they can support each other. The next pawn which white has dedicated his game to is the pawn on c6. It's an isolated pawn, and there's a perfect move which can give us this pawn. Can you find out what? Alright, so the move is pawn to b5. We take advantage of the fact that the pawn is pinned. It's an isolated pawn. So pawn take pawn is not an option. His second option is to play pawn break, but that wouldn't work as well, because still we can play pawn on d4, take pawn on c5. So here black simply plays rook to c7, defending his rook so that it's not pinned anymore, but it's too late. Rook take pawn c6, attacking on the rook and the pawn which is on e6. So rook take rook, pawn take rook, and now this pawn is no more isolated. That's one fact. And the second fact is that this pawn has two more moves to change itself into a queen. Third fact is that the pawn on e7 is being attacked. So black plays bishop to d8 to defend the pawn. White just increases the pressure, bishop to c5. Now the pawn on a7 is being attacked as well. He knows that he can't defend both pawns either ways. So bishop to c7, bishop take pawn, king to. An option here was to play a6, but it's just not going to work because we have opponent's bishop busy in blocking the pawn while our bishop can freely move around. So king to d8, king to g7. And this game obviously goes very well for white as he's a pawn up, not only one pawn up but several pawns up, and he can easily win the endgame. Alright, so let's move on to the next part, which is space. In this example, we are going to have a look at control of a key file, or basically how we can develop and use our rooks. Okay, so it's white to play, and white simply attacks on the bishop, and black has an amazing option here. As the main idea here, remember again, a hint, is to develop the rooks. Okay, the right answer is bishop to d2. This is an amazing move. The reason being is that we can develop our rooks now. Let's see how. Knight to here, attacking on the pawn. We don't want to keep our rooks busy, so we simply defend the pawn by king. Knight back. Rook to d7. The reason being is that we do not want the knight to attack on the rook in the next move. Then we have knight to here. This calls for an exchange very quickly. Let's see how. After we double up our rooks on the d file, if he decides to move his knight, for example, somewhere like b5, then we can just simply move a bishop now because we have got the d file. Knight to here. This is an interesting idea because if we take the knight by pawn, he's going to take a bishop. So yes, and the idea was that now we get the whole d5. We'll see the advantage of this. Rook take rook. The rook is under attack. If he just moves somewhere else without taking the rook, then we'll get another pawn. So he must take the rook. Then rook take rook, and he can take the pawn back. Now the advantage of having a key file is this. White has to play very defensively now. Rook to here. This is a very defensive position how white has to play. Defense, and we get the pawn. Pawn break, capture, and black just won a pawn. So basically we understood how important it is to own a file. Like here, and this is an idea you can use in your games as well to own a file. We can simply block the path of the rook by bishop on the 7th rank or 2nd rank. The rook now may not develop anymore, and just the next moment we can just, if knight didn't play d5, unless you have another idea, because anyways we own the file. If he plays something like knight to b5, then we can simply move a bishop like knight b5, then bishop to any square, for instance bishop to f4, and we own the d5. So this is the idea how it works. Alright, so next part is control of a keyhole, which is the best place for a knight. Alright, let's see an example. So here there's a surprising yet amazing move. Let's see if you can find it out. Alright, so right move is rook to here. Then we have bishop take rook, and we have knight take rook, knight take bishop. And surprisingly, this knight, which has the point value of 3 points, this minor piece, is stronger than these rooks because the knight has a special ability of jumping over pieces, and the position is very cramped for both rooks. So this is how the game goes later on. Pawn break, king to here, rook to here. The idea is that if knight take rook, then rook take rook, so it's equal. But black declines to take the rook, so he must defend his rook, and now the pawn falls to black. Rook, king to h1, rook take pawn. He has to just juggle between these two moves. Rook to here. Now can you notice that the king has almost no squares to move? Rook to here, king to here, so the king can do whatever he wants. This is a zugzwang position. He has got no other moves, absolutely no other moves except for rook to here, which gives the pawn to black's hand. Rook take knight, rook take rook. Then we have got rook to g1 and rook to g2, an amazing move. Because if rook take g2, then pawn take g2 check. So he must not capture, and black is a pawn up and hence easily wins the game.